The fermentation processes that occurred in my bread and starter were both kinds of fermentation, both alcoholic and lactic acid fermentation. The first happened in my starter, and that happened was alcoholic fermentation. That happened when I mixed flour and water, as you can see I'm doing right now, and air together, and all of that made it so that the lactic or the yeast in the air started to consume the flour, which as a product made CO2 and alcohol. That made bubbles in the starter, and that is how alcoholic fermentation was in the starter. Lactic acid fermentation is also in the starter because it starts in the same way as alcoholic fermentation, where the yeast in the air and flour starts to consume the flour glucose, and then it goes from a different path from there. Then it creates lactic acid, which creates the sour taste in sourdough. Fermentation keeps organisms alive because it's an anaerobic process that doesn't require oxygen, and it produces energy without oxygen. Bread rises because the yeast consumes the sugar in the flour, which executes alcoholic fermentation, which produces CO2 and makes the air bubbles, which push against the dough trying to get out, but the dough is elastic because of gluten and instead rises. Sourdough is sour because yeast consumes the sugar in the flour, creates lactic acid, and the presence of lactic acid makes it sour.
This is Maura Chapman, Aidan Hsu's mother, and I am just here to attest that Aidan has been working very hard on this sourdough starter and now making the bread. She daily has added flour and followed all the steps to make the starter. She actually made 2 of them, and also has worked on understanding the science behind it with my husband, who's a scientist. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.